So clearly, the biggest way for the 49ers to free up cap space is a Jimmy Garoppolo trade. Now, as of maybe 3 weeks ago, everybody thought Jimmy was going to get traded. Then all of a sudden, he's going to have surgery. Now, then a lot of people thought maybe he doesn't get traded. Maybe he ends up either getting cut or staying with the team. Then Russell Wilson got traded. Today, Carson Wentz got traded. Now, all of a sudden, it's like Jimmy's back on the block to get traded. Now, let's talk about that first off. What did you think of the Carson Wentz trade? And how do you feel like that would affect a Jimmy Garoppolo trade?
So first thoughts on the Carson Wentz trade were, what the heck? Because, I'm being honest. Like, when I'm looking at the Carson Wentz trade, the Indianapolis Colts have been fairly adamant that they were going to eat the $15 million if they didn't find a suitor. And then to be flipped to the Washington Commanders, who were really aggressive in trying to trade for Russell Wilson. They reportedly gave 3 ones, but Seattle didn't want him in the NFC. For the Washington Commanders to just come out of nowhere, give him 2/3, and with the potential of one going to a second and be done with it, I was shocked. But in reality, it just shows the value of quarterbacks in this league, to where the public perception may not view these quarterbacks as amazing quarterbacks, right? They're probably in that below average to below average kind of caliber. The NFL views these quarterbacks as very valuable, and it just shows how, like, if this is any other position, there's no way near the compensation that they're going to get for these quarterbacks. But because a lot of teams this offseason, it's somewhat of supply and demand. My guy Marco told me it's a lot of supply and demand, because guess what? When you look at it, there are a lot of teams this offseason with strong rosters outside of the quarterback. And with a weak quarterback class, this is the one way where you can upgrade quarterback. So teams, in my opinion, like the Washington Commanders, the Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Steelers, and also the Indianapolis Colts now, all of those teams were strong teams outside of the quarterback, and they could be playoff contenders if paired with a solid quarterback option. So looking at it, yeah, I do think that the Carson Wentz trade probably pushes them a little further. I'm not necessarily as high on Carson Wentz. I don't think that he is one of the better quarterbacks in this NFL league, but he's probably definitely an upgrade over Taylor Heineke. Is he worth the price they paid? I don't know, but guess what? That's the value of quarterbacks in the NFL nowadays, and I think that market changes year after year. Because last year, guess what? Matthew Stafford, he got traded for 2 ones, and the Rams got to offload Jared Goff. This year, Russell Wilson, a player who objectively played worse than Stafford last season, he got traded for 2 ones, 2 twos, a fifth, and 3 players. So it depends on the year after year, and I think it's because of market value that guys like Wilson and guys like Wentz fetch what they did.
Now, that's the key, because I think most people that maybe had some hesitancy as far as whether or not Jimmy would get traded, right? I think Ian Rappaport said this isn't a done deal. Some people were thinking there may be a path to Jimmy Garoppolo actually staying with the team, being restructured, what the case may be. Obviously the injury and the surgery was a big blow, but the other thing was that contract, and being able to see a guy like Carson Wentz, Washington basically eat the whole contract. And then also, like you said, last year with Matthew Stafford and Detroit eat the whole contract with Jared Goff. Now there's a more realistic path to where the 49ers can actually offload this whole contract, as well as maybe get some assets in return as well, Rohan. Now, what would that look like as far as how it affects the 49ers cap?
Yeah, and that's one thing, the contract part, because a lot of teams probably, or a lot of people probably didn't think that Carson Wentz, if he was getting moved, would be fully offloaded. That contract fully offloads. But now that we look at it, I think that the Wentz trade is a baseline for Garoppolo. Looking specifically at the Wentz trade, the Colts they essentially swapped seconds. The Colts got the better second, pick 42 as opposed to pick 47, but they get a 2022 third and a 2023 third that potentially escalates to a second round pick. So potential second and a third, I think, is the baseline for a Jimmy Garoppolo trade. I think that we could definitely see a second and a fourth if the Colts are in the market. I don't necessarily know if they trade the 42nd pick. I think the 49ers would definitely like it and probably have that as the key piece in trade talks. But the Colts may not be as they might not be as willing to trade both their first and second round pick in this draft, which is why you could potentially also see next year's second round pick being floated around. And if the 49ers are somehow able to convince, potentially next year's first round pick, because the Colts probably expect to be a playoff contending team with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback rather than Carson Wentz. So it'd be a late first. So that's why I think there could be some talks in that range. But looking at it, yeah, it's definitely because market value is kind of pushing that narrative right now. I do think I've kind of been a staunch believer in that Garoppolo would get traded. I necessarily haven't always known the price. My original price was a conditional second. I bumped it down to a conditional third after the shoulder surgery news hit. But now in recent news, I've been through my reporting and my writing and stuff, I've kind of been on that second round and potentially even first round pick now, given the Wilson news and the Wentz news now. So I think that's where it's going to end up. It's either probably going to be multiple picks, being like a second and a fourth or second and a third, or it potentially could be one of those big hitting first round picks for next year.
Awesome. And then clearly, there was some talk that maybe the 49ers would have to bring Jimmy back, restructure him. That seems like that's no longer even an option.
I don't think that's an option at all. But back then, I never thought that Jimmy Garoppolo coming back in 2022 over this entire year was at all an option, just because of the cap space. Like when we look at it, the 49ers, the majority of their cap space is going to come from moving Jimmy Garoppolo. And even if they don't want to sign other players, guess what? They got to sign back some of their own guys, and they need that Garoppolo cap space to do so. The entire point of trading up for Trey Lance was to get a rookie contract at quarterback, because guess what? Looking at the Super Bowl quarterbacks over the last 10 years, almost a majority of quarterbacks that played in the Super Bowl, I think you see at least one in most of the years that were on rookie contracts. And the 49ers are trying to resemble that kind of structure by going with a quarterback on a rookie contract. I know this year was a little bit different, obviously, when you see Matthew Stafford out there at quarterback. But Joe Burrow, he's on that rookie contract,
Mm-hmm.
So you see that kind of model, right? You have a rookie contract at quarterback, maximize your window by surrounding that rookie quarterback with a lot of assets on both offense and defense. And that was the reason the 49ers were willing to move on from Garoppolo at the end of the season, because they had a guy on a rookie contract that they probably felt confident in throughout the majority of the season. And so, yeah, I never thought that keeping Garoppolo in 2022 was at all a possibility unless they cut him and re-signed him, which Garoppolo likely wouldn't stay because he wanted to be a starter in this league.
Absolutely. And Wanda Brown, thank you so much for joining the show. I think the Niners have to get rid of Jimmy for nothing else to free up those funds. Absolutely. And you did mention it's about $25 million that would free up once the trade for Jimmy. Now that's once a team fully accepts his whole contract, right? Which seems more and more likely now. There was some talk that maybe they would have to give something back for somebody to take on that contract. Now it seems like somebody might take on that contract without the 49ers have to give up any assets as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And teams that probably are in the mix, seems like the Colts are the front runner because they wouldn't be trading Carson Wentz unless they had a better option at quarterback. And I think that they are probably the front runners right now for Jimmy Garoppolo. The Commanders, in my opinion, were one of the front runners. But looking at it, Colts, Steelers are potentially in the range, but the Panthers is a dark horse. I think those are the three teams that you potentially look for. I think the Panthers are kind of positioning themselves for a Deshaun Watson trade, so I don't necessarily think that they might be as intertwined or entertained by Jimmy. But yeah, like the one kind of big news that we take from this entire kind of part is the Russell Wilson trade definitely benefited the 49ers, not only because it takes them out of the NFC, but the Broncos, in my opinion, were not a strong contender for Jimmy Garoppolo. But a team like the Commanders and a team like the Colts were in these last 2 weeks. So taking the Broncos off the market by having them take up Russell Wilson and also Aaron Rodgers staying put, that helped the 49ers because now guess what? The market the amount of quarterbacks available diminishes, but the market remains the same. And so that's why I thought that was a good move. And that's why I think that Jimmy Garoppolo definitely gets traded probably to one of these three teams.
And can we talk a little bit? I think the Saints also, I've heard rumors that they might be a player as well, but I know they have some cap issues to navigate through before they can make a move. But let's talk about dates, Rohan, as far as, there was talk that before all of these quarterback moves made, that maybe Jimmy's contract wouldn't be off the books in time. They would have to hold off till a little bit later into free agency because somebody might not take his contract right away. This is looking like this is something that's going to be happening in the next day or two. Probably tomorrow, some news will probably break regarding Jimmy G being traded. How important is the timing of getting Jimmy's funds off the books or making this trade? What's the dates that we're looking at for this to get done?
I think it's extremely important that it gets done soon. And I think 100% certainty that Jimmy Garoppolo is not on this team by March 16th. And the reason is the 49ers obviously want to move into the league year with the like in position to get other players on the market. And I know we're going to be talking about that at some point, but there are a lot of players in this market, especially with the 49ers having 28 free agents that the 49ers could be expected to be interested in. And so when we look at it, yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo, like we've seen the news travel fast, right? Carson Wentz was not expected to be moved as early as today, and guess what? He gets shipped. Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, both those pieces of news came. So it seems like it's going to happen between these next few days. If I'm the 49ers, I trade him before the Deshaun Watson news breaks on Friday because that may take away another contender if some team suddenly gets interested in Deshaun Watson. But I think the date to look for is March 14th. That's when the tampering period is free to start. 49ers can start talking to free agents. And I do think that they want to be in the position to be able to at least talk and present offers to these free agents during that March 14th to 16th period so that when free agency hits, they can officially announce some contracts if they want anyone in that early period.
Awesome. So let's assume Jimmy gets traded, full contract is taken off the books alongside with, let's say, Arik Armstead and Jimmy Ward being extended and restructured the way that you talked about. Going into free agency March 14th, where would the 49ers be at cap-wise?
So looking at it right now, the 49ers do have that $3 million. What I said is an Armstead deal or an Armstead restructure likely frees up about $8 million. That puts us at 11. The Jimmy Ward extension probably frees up about $6 million. So that'll put us at around 17, 18 or 16, 17 million. And then we got the Garoppolo news. So in total, the 49ers probably hang around 40 million in free agency cap space to sign the rest of their deal, to sign players for the rest of the team.